Please stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
God our Father, we thank you for your many blessings. We thank you, God, for the opportunity to gather together to discuss business that ultimately affect your people. In this moment, we pray now that you continue to open the windows of heaven and pour out your many blessings upon this great city that we call Miami Gardens. It is our prayers for your knowledge, your wisdom, and your understanding to be upon our lives. All these things we ask in your Son's name, I do pray. Amen.
Amen. Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with All right, Mr. Clerk, we're on city business.
Yeah, we're on city business. Item 4.1, City of Miami Gardens Strategic Plan Update, and this is sponsored by the City Manager.
Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This will be our first meeting with council as a collective group to talk about the strategic planning process. I'm going to turn that presentation over to Mayor Watley Packer, and then she will introduce the consultant group that has brought forward the foundational plan to move forward with the overall strategic plan. Ms. Watley Packer, thank you.
Ms. Packer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. As City Manager Benson indicated, my name is Tamara Wadley-Pecker, and I'm the Assistant to the City Manager for Communications here at the great city of Miami Gardens. First, I want to say thank you to the entire council and the manager's office for your time and valuable input so far as we go through the strategic planning process. Today, Kimley Horn and the Mosaic Group are present with us to share the first update, a brief overview of the foundational report with you regarding the progress made on this initiative so far. And also, as you're aware, later on we will have a number of community sessions planned with each of you to ensure that we get input from the community as well. So with that, I'd like to invite Mr. Stephen Stansberry from the Kimley Horn and Associates to introduce his team and walk you through the update. Thank you again.
Good evening. It's good to see you all again. Again, my name is Stephen Stansberry with Kimley Horn Associates. I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
Anne-Marie Sorrell with the Mosaic Group. Great to see you all.
I want to open with thanking you for pairing us together. If you recall, we didn't start this journey together. It was a recommendation that you all had made. It's been fantastic. We appreciate the partnership with the Mosaic Group. We're continuing to integrate both the public engagement with the research and analysis. We're going to be briefing you on that incrementally as the process goes on. I just want to thank you again for making that partnership again. Appreciate your help.
Thank you all.
Before I get too much into some details, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you recall, we started the process in January. I'm going to give you an update on where we're at in the process, as well as where we're going, and share a bit of our recent findings, what we're calling Part 1, a foundation report. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask those. I also, in the interest of time, probably will not regurgitate everything that's in the foundation report, because I believe you all received a copy of that. And if not, we'll be sure that makes its way to you. So I want to spend just a moment talking about what a strategic plan is. I had the benefit of listening to a lot of the dialogue that you all put forward about expectations for this plan. And also working with the city manager and his team, we've been able to clearly define what this process is, as well as what it's not. Quite frankly, we're trying to avoid encroaching into other processes where you already have plans, where there's other responsible parties involved with those processes. But one of the things we're clearly doing is attempting to build on the progress of the past. There's so many good things that have happened here. It would be remiss for us not to acknowledge that work and find a way to further it. We're also keenly focused on identifying what you're currently experiencing as a community and trying to predict a little bit about what you may be experiencing in the future as a result of that data collection. We'll also be revisiting the vision. I think your vision's clear. I think the question is just, are there things that we want to enunciate or elevate in terms of importance as we contemplate the progress that we'll be making together over the next 3 to 5 years, and ultimately putting in place a plan that will last you with some durability a 10-year period of time. We're also going to be assembling a set of strategies. I think this is the cornerstone of every good strategic plan, hence the name. Essentially, we want to be cognizant of the things that we're experiencing that maybe are externalities, things that aren't necessarily good things that we want to carry into the future, but we also want to accelerate the good things that are occurring and find strategies that work synergistically together with those two concepts. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time tonight talking to you about both the process as well as those findings. I committed to all of you during previous discussions that I'd give you an overview of the process, and rather than me stand up here and read to you about a scope of work, I thought it might best be represented in just the process at a glance. I don't think this work needs to be characterized as complicated. It's a lot of asking of questions, doing a lot of active listening, documenting, and then doing just the hard work of rolling up your sleeves and finding out what strategies align with where you want to go as a community. We've broken this process down into 3 discrete phases. Phase 1 began in January. We're just about at the end of that. It runs through April. This is largely about data collection and documenting, here again, that foundational understanding about what we're experiencing trend-wise as a community. There's also some engagement things that have happened since that time. We've initiated a public survey with the help of the Mosaic Group that's currently open. I hope you've had an opportunity to see that. I'll speak to that a little bit later on. We've also updated some materials on the website, and we've been initiating some conversations with the community that will begin taking place in May. As we look at phase 2, as you can imagine, if we spend most of our time in phase 1 gathering information and mobilizing as a community, phase 2 is really about working into some smaller niches, right? Understanding what the unique perspectives are of different members of the community, as well as different areas within the community, and doing some analysis. This is the portion of our process where we're going to be working very closely with the department heads to determine the themes that we should be clustering our strategies around so that we're most effective. And then ultimately, we'll do another survey to affirm some strategies that we'd like to get feedback on. So we'll be going back out to the public so that you have information about how well those strategies may be received by the public before endorsing them as a recommendation. Lastly, phase 3 is just what you might imagine. It's about wrapping the plan up. We need to author the draft plan. We'll start that work in September. That'll move all the way through October and November. We're going to be working with the Mosaic Group. We really feel like communicating the plan is incredibly important. This plan is going to be written with the community in mind. We don't want to leave anyone behind. We want to write it in a way that it's very approachable and easy to digest. And so with the help of Anne Marie and her team, we're going to get to that point. Ultimately, we'll have a draft plan prior to your council meeting in December. That's our goal. We committed to you that we would accelerate this process, and I think we found an elegant way to achieve this in a 12-month planning process. And with your help and luck, we'll get there together. Are there any questions generally about the process?
Any questions, guys, so far? No?
Great. Thanks. I'll continue on then. I mentioned earlier just some recent activities. I won't go into a lot of detail, but we did begin an awareness campaign led largely by the Mosaic Group. And this is primarily about getting the word out about the plan process, being sure that the materials accurately represent what we're doing, and most importantly, annotating where the community can be involved in the process. And so we're really pleased that that word is out at this point in time. We've begun the first community survey. We've had some success with that. We're hoping to double the amount of participation in that survey over the next couple of months. It will end at the end of May, so just kind of a precursor to advertise it if you haven't taken it yet, and you know folks that should. Please encourage that to happen. And we also did some listening sessions with you all. I want to thank you for your time on that. It may not have felt like something that was incredibly detailed to you, but it was so helpful for us to better understand your priorities, what motivates you, and kind of a little bit of history, quite frankly. It was important for me to hear that. And then lastly, this foundation report. I want to stress what the foundation report represents. It's not your plan. It is the first step in your plan process. We felt like we owed you an early deliverable, and I wanted you to see the type of research that we often do for plans like this. And we've organized it around some logical themes, things that just anyone sitting around a kitchen table might have interest in. You know, what does the composition of our community look like? It's changed over the last 10 years. And so as you grow, so will things change, and it's important for us to just understand that change. I think the other thing that is helpful as a community is to understand our workforce and how we travel, our health, our housing seems to be a continued theme that I hear more and more about. And then ultimately, as a city, we're responsible for being good stewards of the resources that are collected from the public to operate the city. And so we wanted to be sure that we were offering information that allowed the reader a foundational understanding about all of those topic areas. How we use it is largely simply to put the word out. We want others to read it. We want it to be a quick reference guide for you and folks who are participating in the process. We've always found that folks can express themselves better when they're provided information in advance. And so we've taken the time to assemble that plan document, step one, the foundational report. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes going over some key highlights from that document.
Yeah, one question. We have
Sure.
Councilman Leon had one question.
Just before you get into that, thank you again for this detailed report. You mentioned the last day, May, at the end of May will be last for the survey. Can we make sure that we have some hard copies for the senior center? So some of
Absolutely.
them are tech savvy. So let's just keep that in mind.
We love that idea and just recognize it's another captive audience, and so it would certainly bolster participation when we do that.
Thank you.
We'll make it a note of that. Thank you. Anything else? No. Great. I'm going to give some high-level overview of the content of this. I know it's not terribly long, but for those in the audience, I want to be sure that they get a bit of flavor for the type of content. And then when we make it available online, everyone will have access to it as well. So some just real quick population trends that we're seeing here in Miami Gardens. And we did a lot of compare and contrast between the last decade and today, just so that you could see those trends. I think one of the things that's really important to recognize is just the demographic changes that your experience. And there's a lot of information that's bundled within the report, but one of the things that caught my eye most importantly is that your community is aging at a fairly rapid rate right now. And what that means is you're having more people move into your community that are between the ages of 65 and up. And you can see that those numbers are fairly dramatic when you look at the change of what percentage of the population they represent. At the same time, we're also seeing fewer families moving into the community. And you'll see that those numbers are represented in the negative part of the bar. So 0 to 24 households with those age individuals is not as robust, clearly, and in fact, it is in decline at this point in time. You know, we scratched our head as a team, thought, what does that mean? It's not alarming by any stretch of the imagination. It's not unusual to see similar kinds of curves for places in South Florida. But we also have some hypotheses that you look back at what you had in the way of community facilities and assets 10 years ago, they're a lot different than what you have today because of the investments that you've made. And so we're really hopeful that some of those investments translate to a more diverse spectrum of age cohorts over time, knowing that you've made those investments. Even your median household age, you'll start to see is around 38, which is up from 32. But as I mentioned earlier, it's not unusual in South Florida. For comparison, Miami-Dade County is over 40. So you're kind of right there in the mix with everyone else. Median household income, there's a lot of information about income expressed in ranges geographically, is about $61,500. Compared to the county, you're not far off at $67,000. These are just comparisons. It kind of says that Miami Gardens fits in with the rest of Miami-Dade County. Another thing that's often overlooked is workforce. And I'm not talking exclusively about jobs. I'm talking about people that are of working age and where they may work, which is an interesting piece of information because it also influences transportation. And it influences cost as well. So if you look up in the upper left-hand corner of that graphic, you'll see that I've got 27,000, almost 27,500 people commute into Miami Gardens daily to work. It's a pretty big number. And if you look on the other side of that, you'll see that of people that live in Miami Gardens that are of working age, 40,000 of them commute outside to go to work someplace outside of Miami Gardens. There's only 2,500 people, essentially, that live and work in Miami Gardens. Here again, not an alarming statistic, just a piece of information. I think it helps speak to some of the things that you might want to begin prioritizing over time, and we'll bring more information about what that might look like in the future. Wages, comparatively speaking, here again are very similar to Miami-Dade. Here in Miami Gardens, 32,000, Miami-Dade, almost 36. I think you all know most of this information, obviously, because this is the place with which you guys are influencing the recruitment of businesses, but largely your biggest increase was in the transportation and warehousing area over the last 10 years in terms of adding new jobs. And it's a pretty big spike. It doesn't take a huge number to make those percentages spike the way that they do, but it certainly is represented in the research that we were able to do. And there's something to really be proud of in that you added over 7,400 jobs in that 10-year period, which is great.
That was UPS.
I'm sorry?
I think that was UPS.
Yeah, it could have. It's largely influenced by that. Yeah. Your team did well in that tournament as well, so quick plug there. So how we travel is another piece of information. As a strategic planner, I just kind of want to understand where people live, where they work, and how they get there. I think that's just important for us to better understand how our city operates. There's some kind of really nerdy information that we use as planners called the H&T Index, the Housing and Transportation Index. It contemplates what a typical household would spend on transportation and housing, and through those understandings, we can tell how many households are what we would consider cost burdened. In other words, they're having to spend a greater percentage of their household income on transportation and housing. And so you can see, I'm not going to read this entire table, but you can see that the annual transportation cost for people in Miami Gardens is measurably higher than those of the rest of Miami-Dade County. And auto ownership costs are largely influencing that. Those are higher. And what goes into auto ownership cost is pretty much everything, from the acquisition of the car to making a payment on the car to insuring a car to maintaining a car, paying the taxes on it, putting fuel on it, all those sorts of things. So these are averages and not meant to represent any specific cohort, but you can see at $11,000 a year almost, that's a lot of money coming out of most households when you contemplate what the median household income may be. And when you look at those places that have at least one auto, you can tell that this is an auto-dependent environment. Not too surprising. It is South Florida. There's a lot of driving that takes place, but almost everyone has at least access to one vehicle in their home. When we see that happen, obviously it creates a spike in the cost for travel. When we add things like health, becomes to create a more complete picture for our community. Now that we know a little bit more about age and our household characteristics, one of the things that we notice is that your life expectancy here is fairly on par with the region as a whole. It's slightly lower, male and females broken down there for interest's sake. And one of the things that also caught our attention was that about 20% of residents are without health insurance. This varies by community. We see spikes of insurance rates throughout the country, but when you get into the 20% realm, it is a little bit cause for concern. So it's one of those things that we're taking some time to investigate why that might be, and are there remedies to that, so that we can be thinking about strategies that align with that. Health often follows things like obesity and disease, follows those same types of things. We've included information about that. It's not meant to be a comprehensive health report, but I do think it's helpful for you to understand how you compare with some of your peers. Now, housing. I kind of pushed this to the end only because I know that there's so much interest in it. And there's more information than just these charts in the report itself, but I think the place that I would point out maybe some attention would be the age of your housing stock. If you look at in comparison, the upper left, the median year build is 1967. So while those homes have some charm to them, they've got some age to them, which means they've got a lot of deferred maintenance and some added costs with heating and cooling, makes their owning a home that's older a bit more expensive. When you compare that to Miami-Dade, 1978 is the median year build, and the rest of the statistical area, the region, and if you will, 1981. Rents are almost on par across the board. I was a little bit surprised at that, and yet the information is really solid data. So everyone seems to have a median rent that kind of floats around that $1,400 to $1,500 mark across the region. Here again, that's not so unusual because rents are often set at a regional scale. And then median home value, you can see there how you compare across the board. You know, despite the fact that the median home value may be slightly less than the county, this area has experienced an incredible amount of housing appreciation. Prices have gone up significantly. You all have shared that with me. The numbers bear it out to be true. There's some other things that we've mentioned in here. I alluded to this Housing and Transportation Index. You'll see on the right-hand side of this slide that average housing cost in Miami Gardens represents about 30% of household income. And so that's a large number, but not disproportionate when you look at other places. And almost 48% pay over 30% of their income on housing. So it's that cohort, that group that's paying more, that's probably feeling the greatest struggles because they probably have an older home, it's costing them more, and it's disproportionately higher than those around them. The average cost of transportation is 23%. And I mentioned that number was higher than the region, but it's also higher than the national target of 15%. So it's a fairly measurable delta there between 23 and 15%. Interestingly enough, over 100% pay as a result, more than the 15% norm for transportation. One of those things to pay attention to, and quite frankly, it's difficult to curve those things unless you have the opportunity to create more walkable communities and or a more transit-friendly environment. And then when you combine the two, that's the chart on the right. And effectively, the combined average housing and transportation cost as expressed as a percent of income is 53%. You'd love for that target not to exceed 45% by measure. So it just shows you that folks in Miami Gardens happen to be paying a bit more than the areas around them. And then 86% pay more than 45% of income on housing and transportation combined. I told you that we were going to just take a quick minute to take a look at how the city finances look and how we fund our city. I know that when I sit down with my parents or my grandparents and we talk about these sorts of things, which we do because we kind of nerd out on these sorts of data sets, it's kind of interesting that most folks don't know how cities are funded, and only because it's complicated. It's not because the information isn't there. It's just that it's really complicated. You can see here the variety of funding sources that are collected by your community that happen to fund the activities of operating the city, and we want to just make that aware to the readers so that they understand the variety of sources and the good work that your staff, quite frankly, is doing to juggle those funds to get them in the right places. Okay, so community survey number 1. It's a really high-level survey. If you haven't taken it yet, I really encourage you to do so. This is my plug to anyone in the audience. If you have not taken the survey yet, we would love for you to scan the QR code. It takes just a few minutes to do. Really appreciate, again, the help of the Mosaic Group to help get this up online. Effectively, we're asking questions about things that you value, what your vision for the community is, and the expectations that you have moving forward. I think it's a really great way for us to level set about what our future target should be. We also are using this as a moment to help build some trust with the community to understand that we want their input and we need their input to help shape the direction that the community will take through the strategic plan. We've got, I think we're probably closer to 400 responses at this point, but we just started this about a month ago, and as I mentioned, we've got 2 more months to go. My goal, with a little bit of help from staff and from the Mosaic Group, is to double that number just so we can increase our confidence level in the results, and we'll be sharing those results incrementally as we have them available. So a couple of the key takeaways from the Part 1 Foundation Report. If you just had to sum it all up, you've got an incredibly rich, diverse community. It is aging. You have fewer young families right now at the moment, which creates yet another opportunity to attract those families in the future. 80% of your residents have health insurance. You have access to hospitals, 11 of them nearby within a 9-mile radius of City Hall. Your finances are in good shape, with over 37% of your revenues coming from property taxes and consistent decline in municipal debt. That's not something I get to say behind a podium like this in most communities. So kudos to the hard work and the diligent decision-making that you all have been making. Vibrancy. You've got more than 35,000 jobs in the city at the moment. That number continues to increase. Most of your residents commute outside, probably chasing the highest wage job that they can get in the region. And 58% of homes are owner-occupied with a median value of over $400,000. So those are some really high-level key takeaways. I'm going to close with just some quick upcoming activities so that you can foreshadow and understand what we're going to be doing next. We alluded to this notion that we'll be having community work sessions in each of your council districts. With your help, you can help bolster some of the participation in those. We're going to be asking lots of thoughtful questions, collecting information, and summarizing those results. I've got a meeting tomorrow, again with my second meeting with your departmental leadership. We're going to focus a little bit more on some opportunities, as well as identifying any constraints that maybe stand in the way of them achieving the goals that you set for them. And then we're going to close the survey at the end of May. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be bringing back results once that's completed, and at that time we'll have more information about what themes we would recommend that you focus on moving forward in the strategic plan process. And with that, I probably said too much, but if you have any questions, I'd love to take them.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Stefan, this is a wonderful presentation that you put together.
Thank you.
And I just want to say kudos to you and the Mosaic Group for your work on this.
Thanks.
I think I echo the same sentiments. You guys did a great job, so we look forward to the more information to come.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question. I echo the sentiments of my colleagues as well as it relates to the presentation and information. And, I thoroughly enjoy having a conversation with you all virtually. I was really excited and look forward to the development of this plan. But I wanted to go back to the survey portion of it. If I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we post the survey notification or flyer on social media, it's more so of encouraging the residents to scan the QR code. No, is there a link on that they click on the link and it takes them? Okay, that's what I would because I know it can be a bit difficult if you have to scan the code that you're viewing on social media. So if there's a link, then I'm totally fine with that.
Great.
And then I also wanted to make sure that all 3 charter officers' office is being included in the conversation as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I have. Again, I think the presentation was well. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Yes, is there a percentage of surveys that would be a solid number for us to drive to complete so that we could consider that as a representative number of information, a representation of our population?
I love the way you're thinking about that. I would caution you, it's not designed as a statistically valid survey, which would be random, right? So when we do statistically valid surveying, it's more like polling that you would do to try to ascertain, generally with a plus or minus understanding, are people for or against something? So this is completely open and voluntary. We like that process because it doesn't create a barrier to participation. But what we will be able to do is to tell you with greater confidence once we're finished how many people took it, and in what different demographic cohorts, and maybe even some geographic distribution of where. That would help you develop an opinion about, did we do a good job? Did we get good coverage? Do we need to canvass the community a bit more aggressively during the second survey to ensure we didn't leave anyone behind?
I don't understand. So you say we're going to have a second survey, true?
Correct.
And how is that second survey going to? I saw the areas and the folks that you are going to seek to get, but I guess what I'm trying to figure out is how do we ensure that those people that say may not be watching this meeting, how are we going to market the fact that there is a survey?
Yeah.
So social media and...
Yep. I'm going to actually let Anne Marie, she's the specialist at all this. I could guess at it, but she's going to have a more,
Okay, all right.
more accurate answer.
All right. So, so far we've been, the city's been helping us with sending out the survey in the newsletter, city's newsletter. At the upcoming meetings that we'll be having with you all, we will also be asking the community to complete surveys at those meetings, the ones that are taking place in May. We are doing some additional events in the community, so we're looking at the calendar with Tamara and her team to see what other events. So far we've done karaoke in the gardens, we've done jazz in the gardens. We're going to get the printouts to go to the senior centers. We'll put some boxes around for people to drop the physical copies in as well. So there'll be a lot more happening over the next month or so to get more survey results. Ideally, for the numbers, if we could get, over 600, we'd be really happy. Of course, closer to 1,000 would be even better. So, of course, your help with sharing it and just encouraging those to take it, those who work for the city as well. We definitely want the employees to participate in the survey. So any way that we can boost those numbers, we greatly appreciate it.
Okay, I hope there's more than 600 people that'll complete that.
With the survey?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, we hope so. I mean, surveys, as we know, are not the easiest things. It is 15 questions, so what ends up happening sometimes, because we've gotten a lot of click-throughs on the survey, but then people abandon the survey. So that's when we're talking about this is complete, not started. So a lot of times, unfortunately, people they get to a few questions and they're like, all right, I'm not doing this. So we do want them to be completed surveys that we're tracking and not those that started. But we have had a significant amount of people who have gone to the site, started it, but they just don't complete it. So we can't count those.
Okay. So can you make sure I get a copy of the survey?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, certainly. Any other questions?
Go ahead, Mayor.
I'd just like to say that I thought that this was a phenomenal report. It was clear, it was concise, very well done, so kudos to your company. I'm also happy to see that your company and the Mosaic Group found some synergy, and I love that. And I promise to take my survey tonight.
I was just going to say to Anne Marie's point, I'm one of those individuals that will start the survey but won't finish it. So I definitely know that to be true. That
So
I'm gonna finish
you
this
need
one.
to finish
I
this
won't
one.
promise like Councilwoman Julian to complete it tonight.
He's going to complete it tonight, don't you worry.
But I'll definitely complete the survey. But I know that that's a challenge. And I do want to just highlight that 4,600 to 1,000 surveys completed is a fairly large number, because when you look at the average participation of the residents base overall, you don't see 1,000 individuals. You don't see 600 people. And you can gauge, and for me, I gauge it more so of looking at the average participants that come to a biweekly or a second and a fourth a Wednesday council meeting, or our local meetings. At an average for my table talk, I can see anywhere between 30 to 50 residents. So if you talk about the participation and the active of for most cities, our numbers are fairly high compared to the residents' activities and being involved. But I definitely think that 1,000 is a really large number to just get gauge the feedback of what the community and stakeholders are saying. I would just only probably throw out there a little bit more grassrooting. I don't know how far your team would do, and this is just may be something that you all have to brainstorm with our local businesses. Whether it's some of our major retail stores and trying to get some kind of tabling out there for about an hour or so to just kind of collect that information. And for me, I see that as the base that's not tied into what we do at the city on a regular basis. These are your everyday people that goes to work and home, work and home, and work and home, and then shopping at Sunshine Meats.
Yeah, no, and thank you so much for that, Councilman Stevens. And I can just, being a person who's been doing community outreach and engagement for 18 years, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. So it is it's a very challenging way to engage people to really take action, especially in surveys, and there's no incentive for them to take the survey. So, but we'll continue to do our best and try to get as many numbers as possible, and definitely appreciate all of your assistance in helping us achieve that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to also commend you all because over I don't know how many years it's been since we've been working, maybe 2 years, the presence that you and your team have at karaoke, jazz in the gardens, being one that walk around these events and get all my steps in. I see you working, so I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. We enjoy the work we do. Thank you.
Hold on. And let me just encourage the residents that are here today to please take this survey that they're talking about. And I'm sure that after this meeting, you can get the information from the Mosaic group. But it's vitally important that you guys go ahead and do that survey and then tell some of your neighbors about it. And if you can get that information to them as well. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
That's exactly what I want to say. I do believe that information is only as good as it affects our decision making. And I would hate to believe that all of our decision making that would go into this strategic plan to some degree is only representative of 600 people. And so that's why I encourage and would urge that we take a look into some of the places where our families congregate, that a paper survey or an electronic survey or in another way that we could get that information out to them. And also to make sure that the survey, which I haven't seen yet, I don't know if it's a yes or no, I don't know if it's a narrative or, multiple choice, but its format also makes it easier for people to be able to read the questions and or statements and respond to them in the easiest of ways. Because once again, whatever information comes from those surveys, we're going to make decisions from them. And while you don't have a majority of a population, you should have a statistical amount that we find is pretty solid representation of what our diverse environment is. And that would be something that I would be looking at as well, is what is the source of where this came from. We surveyed so many people in education. We surveyed so many people that were churchgoers. We surveyed so many people that were within a certain age bracket at colleges and universities. And we surveyed so many of the majority of people, like you say, that are aging. So again, I want to see that kind of diversity in the responses to the surveys. And whether it's 1,000, 2,000, or 600, I don't want to see that we have a large component or representation of one group to use as the basis only when it's not a representation of the wider population so stipulated in this report. And finally, I'd just like to say, you guys are one of my favorite, right? And so I'm glad that you guys are working very, very well together. This is, in fact, a stellar report and very easy to follow. And I just want to say I'm just so proud of you and thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And we will take everything you've said into consideration. We will go back and do some additional strategies and do some additional outreach per what you just recommended. And the survey is a combination of multiple choice. There are some open-ended questions as well for people to fill in their thoughts and really just voice what their thoughts are.
Councilman Leon?
In closing, so me and Councilman Stevens, what we'll do is we'll help you with that community outreach. We'll work with you and get a date, and we can set up at Walmart, Publix, and some of those shopping centers. So we'll get permission from those property managers, and I'm volunteering you.
Well, thank you, Councilman.
And we'll assist with getting those extra surveys out in the community.
That'll be wonderful. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
And Councilwoman Julian and I will also help you.
Councilwoman Campbell.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman.
is it? I see the cutoff date is in May. Did I understand that correct? Is it doable to go past May, maybe into June, because there are some major events coming up in June, and we could, try to capture it?
I like where you're going with it. I mean, we always just monitor progress, and if we're not getting the level of participation that we might anticipate, there's no reason why we shouldn't extend, as long as it doesn't slow the process down. I think one of the things we want to make a commitment to is to follow through on the schedule that we agreed to. If you want to afford more time to engagement, we certainly can, but that would be something that needs to be modified in our scope. So I think there's no reason why we wouldn't extend if we're not pleased with where we're at the end of May. So anticipate that would likely happen.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think we could probably go through the Juneteenth event if that's
what I was
if that's
saying.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was because this. I know it's some major events in June. If we don't have the numbers, can we go past May?
Yep. And for anyone that didn't get a chance to scan that QR code, I was just informed that Tamara's got printed cards out in the lobby to take one with you, and it gives you a link to that survey. So we're doing what we can to get the word out.
Let's make sure everybody pick up one of those cards.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thank you guys. We appreciate all the work that you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great report. All right, any other questions or concerns from the dais? Showing none, show this meeting adjourned.